Who's on first? This one's going to be short and sweet since it's in addition to my regular weekly program. Just a few items that may be of interest. Coming to you from deep in the hood, this is the Eurasian Century. I've had a few inquiries in light of my views on Christian violence regarding the ethnic cleansing, my preferred term, currently being perpetrated by the Israelis in Gaza. In this regard, I will offer the following. Uh, the main analogical distinction between what the Israelis are doing, and Christian concepts of war uh, is that the Israelis created the situation in which they find themselves by immoral conduct on their part in conquering and oppressing Palestinian Arabs on the one hand, and on the other hand, the fact that the Hamas attack, and in general the Palestinian resistance, is not an attempt at genocide against the Jews, but rather an attempt to eradicate the government of the State of Israel and return the land to its indigenous population, or at least establish a Palestinian state outside the borders of the 1967, to which the Israelis were restricted by the UN resolution after their war of conquest and occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. And so my feelings on that, I prefer to stay neutral and let it play out. In any case, the main thing I want to talk about domestic matters here in the United States, because they do have a bearing on international politics and the little project in which Russia and China are involved. Normally, I don't say much about the current internal battles here because most Americans seem to be either indifferent to or detached from any serious grasp of political realities. You tend to get the government you deserve, and given the world trends I see, I'm simply content to let American politics play out, since I don't think they can actually have that much of a retarding effect on the Eurasian project. However, given my last program on the nature of liberalism and its political theory, I thought I would bring to my American audience's attention a certain interesting dynamic which seems to have begun in the American political establishment. If congressional Democrats, in specific Nancy Pelosi, intended to breach the separation of powers and take over the White House, I'm not sure that they would do anything different than what they have to date. By congressional Democrats, I mean chiefly former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Since his ascent to office, it has become clear to most that President Joe Biden is suffering from clear and deteriorating symptoms of dementia. We need not argue about that. And this was the case prior to the election as well, though not as advanced. This has prompted many people to speculate on who is actually in charge at the White House, since it has become ever more clear by the day that it is not Joe Biden due to his impaired faculties. Some have ventured that Obama is still calling the shots through his former staffers. Some suspect Clinton involvement. Some say Susan Rice is actually the decision maker. Some say it is some combination of the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, and others. However, it may be that Nancy Pelosi is actually calling the shots. Through 2022, Pelosi had a record of 100% voting with the administration's policies. Look it up. This is not necessarily that odd, given that they both belong to the Democratic Party, and often Democrats vote in lockstep. But this is exactly what you would expect if she were the one actually calling the shots and directing the presidential agenda. Now, this is not that disturbing to me, since I am not a small d Democrat in any case. However, the Constitution of the United States is founded upon three independent branches of government. Of course, the executive and Congress often work in tandem when they are controlled by the same party. So, how would we know the difference if Pelosi were actually directing the show in the White House rather than just happening to agree with every last thing the administration proposes without exception? That is difficult to answer. However, in the case where the president is effectively incapacitated and unable to make the cognitive decisions necessary to actually direct the office, the plain fact is that someone else certainly is directing the executive branch. This we can safely say is certain. This, in and of itself, is deeply problematic since Biden was the one inaugurated as president. But you can see the danger if the legislative and executive have effectively merged. Would they not seek to pack, expand, or otherwise subvert the Supreme Court of the United States through slander and demands for recusals of unfriendly justices if they had the power to do so? They have certainly floated such proposals and made such statements. Might they endeavor to abolish the Electoral College? Again, they have suggested the same. To secure their place in Congress, would they not attempt to subvert the integrity of elections? Most certainly. Inasmuch as the Democratic Party already controls the FBI and CIA, would this not be a further cause for concern if one were actually enamored with the idea of maintaining a republic? How about the partnering with social media and the mainstream legacy media to censor speech regarding all the above? Again, check. That's what's going on. So, let's just speculate here. Nancy Pelosi saw how the Supreme Court was affected by Trump's 3 appointments. She saw Roe overturned as well as other liberal decisions. She had to get Trump out of the office, out of the White House at any cost, and is horrified that he threatens to return and clean house. Is she above making the White House answer directly to her? Is that even seriously in question? By the way, what was Gavin Newsom doing in China? And what was Chinese President Xi doing in California? All this happened last year. And isn't Newsom related to Pelosi? Do you believe in coincidences? So do I. How many? Pelosi says Biden should run in 2024. And I'm not the first person. Gary Franks wrote a opinion back in September of 2022. He's a congressman from, let me make sure. He was served 3 terms as U.S. representative for Connecticut's 5th District, first black Republican elected in the House in nearly 60 years, as New England's first black member of the House. And back then, he wrote a column brought to everyone's attention, to the extent that it was read by people, that Biden is a rubber stamp for the Congress. Every president of the United States in the 20th and 21st century has vetoed bills. At that point, Biden had vetoed none, and he did not before the midterm elections and the Republican taking over of the House. President Roosevelt vetoed 653 bills. But vetoes have trailed off in recent decades. So, what else do we have here? Pelosi's on record, and you should Google each of these. In the run-up to midterm elections, Pelosi was on record saying, "I will always have influence." Do you not wonder why it is so difficult to find a House Republican speaker willing to challenge Democrat policy? Biden has vetoed 9 bills since the GOP took over the House. all of which only passed with Republican support in the Senate. This was Manchin and somebody else. None of these have been overridden. Google this as well. On a video, I think that Tucker Carlson commented on and found it very strange, and he couldn't figure out what she was saying and thought she might be drunk or something like that. She said, "We don't say open sesame, we say open Biden." Google that. Also, in remarks by President Biden at the House Democratic Caucus Virtual Issues Conference, and this is on the White House's website, this quote is still up there. After concluding his remarks, Biden said, quote, "And I'm happy to take questions if that's what I'm supposed to do, Nance. Whatever you want me to do." They tried to contain this by refuting that Pelosi responded to this by saying that she didn't want him to talk, which may well have been a doctored video. I don't know. But the Biden quote is on the video, and that was real. He knows to whom he answers. Of course, he can't be expected to keep the secret if he's suffering from dementia. Pelosi, on the other hand, would probably not say anything about it. Pelosi controls Biden. If you find this program valuable, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time.